Hello, it's so good to see you today. I'm on a plant-based mission. My Canadian friend told me that she usually makes a classic Canadian meat pie for Christmas, and this year she wants to make it plant-based and healthier. And I thought it's the end of November, so I've plenty of time to test out recipes. I'm gonna try to create a plant-based version of the classic Canadian meat pie. In order to do that, I first need to make the meat filling, and I'm going to use seitan for that. I know it's a funny word, seitan, but it's originated from Asia, so I don't know where the word came from, but it's made from gluten powder or vital wheat gluten. To make seitan, it's essential that you have two particular ingredients. You cannot make it without those. And those two are vital wheat gluten and nutritional yeast. The vital wheat gluten are the gluten structures that are found in wheat that kind of makes it stretchy, and that creates the perfect texture for your meat replacement. And the nutritional yeast is the taste that makes it really savory and meat-like. If you taste it plain, it almost tastes a little bit like old cheese, but in the seitan, it makes it taste really savory and meaty-like. So since I cannot do without those two ingredients, I ordered them online, and my package has arrived at a parcel pickup store, so I'm on my way to pick it up and see if it has arrived and I can start making the recipe. Got my package. I can't wait to unbox this, because if it's not the right ingredients, then I still cannot make it. Yay, it's the vital wheat gluten and the nutritional yeast. I'm good to go. We will start by making the seitan sausages. For this recipe, you will need a quarter of a cup of white beans. You need one quarter of a cup of vital wheat gluten, a quarter of a cup of nutritional yeast, 1 cup of bouillon or stock or broth, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. I used a low sodium soy sauce because I don't want it to get too salty. A generous tablespoon of tomato paste, and then all kinds of herbs and spices, and you can adjust these according to what you're going to make with these sausages. Today I'm going to make the tourtière, and I've never made a tourtière, so I looked up the recipes. And I will be using a teaspoon of black pepper, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of thyme, and then half a teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ginger, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, half a teaspoon of mustard powder, half a teaspoon of allspice, and then just 1/8 of a teaspoon of cloves. Now I'm going to start by taking a big bowl, and I'm first going to mash the white beans. So I got my beans mashed, and I'm now going to add all the dry ingredients. So first I'll add the nutritional yeast. Here I have the gluten powder or the vital wheat gluten. This is very powdery, so I'm going to slowly pour it in. Otherwise I have a cloud of white. I put all the spices into one little container, so I'm going to add all of this. Now I'm going to add the soy sauce, the tomato paste, and when I've added all the dry or mostly dry ingredients, I will add the stock or the bouillon, and then it turns kind of weird. It will be getting a little bit stretchy, and you may think if you make it for the first time that something went wrong, but if it looks weird to you, it probably went right. So I'll pour in the stock and I will just make sure everything is incorporated. Yeah, just make sure you mix it really well and that there are no clumps of anything anymore, like clumps of spices or a dollop of tomato paste somewhere that's not fully incorporated. And this stuff is kind of weird. Look, it's kind of, I don't know if you can see it, but it's all kind of stretchy and funny looking. So don't worry about that, that's perfect. And now all we need to do is roll these into sausages and steam these over water. Because the rolling goes really fast, I will first start a pot with water for the steamer. Okay, for the steaming I use just a regular pot. I filled it up with water, well, not filled it up, but just like about an inch. And then I have a steaming basket, put it in there. Water goes over this bottom of the steaming basket, but that doesn't really matter. Then I'll just turn on heat. When it comes to a boil, I'll turn it down, and now we can first roll the sausages from the seitan dough. To create the sausages, I got 6 sheets of aluminum foil, and I'm gonna put the dough in half and then thirds. So I have 6 pieces, and I'm just gonna put a piece of the dough with my hands on each sheet of foil and then shape it kind of into a log. So you take a piece of dough, put it on the aluminum foil. It doesn't come really precise because they snap into place when they are steamed. And then you roll it up. Like a little Tootsie Roll. And you do that for all 6. All the sausages. I'm making sure the heat is low and that there's plenty of water. They need to steam for 40 minutes. I'll show you how the sausages turned out. In Canadian Christmas spirit, we will be making a Tourtière. Don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm now going to work on the pie crust, and since we were on a mission to make it more healthy and more plant-based, I'm going to try to make an oil-free plant-based crust, and I'm going to use just almond flour for that and some wheat flour or all-purpose flour and just a pinch of salt and then a little bit of water. So I'm going to use 1.5 cups of almond flour, and then I have a cup of all-purpose flour with a little bit of, I used some garlic salt, but you can also use regular salt or omit the salt if you don't want anything with added salt. And I measured 5 tablespoons of water. This may be too little. Maybe I will add 2 more, but I'm just first going to check how it turns out with 5 tablespoons of water. So I'm adding the 5 tablespoons of water, and then with my hands I'm going to bring it together. When you first start out, it feels like it's not enough water, but it should just barely come together. So I think it's almost there. And when it has formed a ball, I will wrap it in cling foil and let it rest in the refrigerator. And in the meantime, we can work on our filling. For the filling we're going to use 2 stalks of celery. And then we're going to have 3 small carrots or 2 bigger ones. I have really tiny carrots, so I'm using 3. And we're going to use 1 red onion. And we're going to use some potatoes that are already boiled. I use 2 medium-sized potatoes. Last but not least, 4 cloves of garlic, or if they're really large you can use 3. And we're going to use 3 of the seitan sausages that we created. I'm first going to roughly chop them. We're now going to saute the vegetables. I'm not using any oil because I want this recipe to be oil-free. I'm just going to use a drop of water, or you can use a little bit of stock. Now it's getting really fragrant and it's starting to brown. I'm turning down the heat a little bit and I'm going to add the garlic and just the tiniest drop of water. You want the garlic to be soft but not burnt. Now I'm going to add the meat or the seitan. I cut it up quite finely. I will be adding the spices, and I deviated a little bit from the recipe that I looked up online because the sausages tasted a little bit strange. I thought there were too many different kinds of spices in it. So for the end result I'm using black pepper, nutmeg and cloves. The last thing I'm adding is the potatoes, and they will absorb all the water. You should definitely mash the potatoes before adding them, and the mixture should be moist but not soupy or wet. You should have a taste at this point to see if you need to adjust the seasoning. And now I'm ready to roll out the dough. And first I will turn on the oven on 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. I'm also preparing a little spring form. This one is, I think, 18 centimeters, maybe 20. Yeah, it's not too big because I didn't make a lot of dough, but if you double the dough recipe, you can create a larger pie. I will be putting a piece of parchment paper on the bottom. And then I'll use a baking spray for the rim. So that's not 100% oil-free, but it will not be in the pie itself, but only on the rim, so the dough won't stick. Here's my dough. It has been resting in the refrigerator. I'm going to roll it out, and I might need a little bit of flour for it to make it not stick. I'm afraid it's a little crumbly. Not sure if this is going to work. We'll see. I'm going to use a little bit of flour. Yeah, I think this dough is way too dry. Should have added a little bit more water. Can't be helped anymore. Next time. That's why we do tryouts and tests. And test recipes before we make it for guests. So it's kind of falling apart, as you may see. And I'm just gonna push it into the bottom of my prepared pan. Yeah, I'd say this dough is not really a success. I was able to cover the bottom and the sides and then added the filling to the pie. I still had some vegan puff pastry in the freezer and I'm gonna use it to cover the top because I wanted to make a classic tourtière. Okay, the vegan puff pastry wasn't ideal either. I tried to roll it out, but then it got all sloppy, I don't know. Came in these little squares, so I couldn't use it in the round form. But I'm gonna leave it at this. It probably will taste good, so I don't mind if it doesn't look as I wanted to. Into the oven it goes for 40 minutes at 350 Fahrenheit or 180 Celsius. And that's how it turned out.
For Christmas.
Well, we ate the pie, like all the pie, and not once it crossed my mind that maybe I should get some footage for this video. So I cannot show you the result, but we really enjoyed it. It was hearty and flavorful and really tasted like winter. But now that I've tasted it, I have two recommendations for you if you want to try to make this recipe yourself. The first one is go easy on the spices, and don't use too many different spices. And the second recommendation is for the pie crust. I would use a little more liquid and I would use soy milk. And if you want to cover the top of the pie, I would definitely double the recipe. I will link all of the recipes below in the description box. The recipe for the seitan sausages, the recipe for the oil-free vegan pie crust, and the recipe for putting it all together in a tourtière. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one.
Well, I'm all for Christmas. It's a magical time full of kisses.